All right, we're now live. Welcome everyone to today's Raleigh Public Relations Society virtual lunch and learn. Today's presentation is titled "You Don't Have to Stand Out. You don't have to shout to stand out: Networking Conversations that Connect and Convert." And I think it's wonderfully timed for this new era that we're all embracing on what connecting and networking looks like in a digital era. And also, I'm optimistic that we will all be back together in person soon. So I hope everyone walks away with some new thoughts about how to leverage those opportunities in person and digitally. Christine, I will let you take it from here. Tell us a little bit about your background and your approach to conversations that connect and convert.
Oh, great. Thank you. I really appreciate you having me. And I have a personal affinity for helping people find their voice. And what I find is that people who are highly relational, people who are of service, are very humble. They don't like to beat their chest about who they are and what they're about. And so what I've done over my 14 years or so of entrepreneurship is I've developed a highly relational way to network. And you may think back to when you first started, quote unquote, networking, to say, were you ever formally educated in networking? I wasn't. You know, I stepped in and tried to figure out what this was all about and what I was supposed to be doing. And what I found was I didn't love having people deal their business card to me like a poker hand or hounding me after a networking event or putting me on their newsletter without my permission. And I started seeing a lot of things that really didn't land well with me as a highly relational person. Now, I'll also say that I'm a little more on the quiet side, though I love to present. And so people think I'm extroverted, but I'm really a little more introverted. And so when I was trying to learn how to network, I just thought there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a way that feels more relational and resourceful and giving than I was witnessing when I was going out networking. And so I started developing a way, not only an infrastructure for networking, but more importantly, the conversation itself. So you guys could go out today and find 100 blogs on networking 101 and what to do. But what I find less prevalent out there is how to have the networking conversation so that it benefits both people and so that they're efficient. So I happen to be an efficiency expert. I love getting the most that I can out of any time that I might invest in networking, sales, business development. So what you're going to hear today is my kind of little commingled approach to networking, but more about the conversation itself so that you can navigate it for A, greater engagement with the person that you're speaking with, and B, make it convert in the way that you would want it to, and in an efficient way. So you're going to hear some of that. So before we get started, I know we've got a chat function here. So I would love for you just quickly in the chat to tell me if you're in transition or a corporate PR professional, or maybe an entrepreneur. Just type that in the chat so we can get a gauge of who else here, because I would love to speak specifically to your circumstance as well. Now, the other thing I'm fully aware of is that I'm standing or sitting in front of communication professionals. So you guys are going to hear some things that you've heard before. And what my hope is that my tweak to put it into a context of networking conversations will give you a little nugget to walk away with. Now, when I submitted the write-up for this talk, one of the things that I said is that you might have some inner work to do in addition to the outer work when it comes to networking in a very fruitful way. And so I'm going to start by talking more about the inner work. The outer work, again, you guys are familiar with, so I'm going to move through that fairly quickly. But I also, at the end of this presentation, I put together for you specifically this group, How to Network Today Virtually. So I'm doing some of the how-to that you may or may not have thought of in terms of your networking in this environment. So again, I'm hopeful that could be helpful for you as well. So Lisa, are you able to read some of those responses real quick?
Absolutely, Christine. Let me pull up the list here. Jessica Pope, welcome. She works in corporate marketing. Kat Harding is in PR and social for the North Carolina Museum of Art. Kelly Probst is a fellow PR agency professional. Hey, Kelly. I'm an agency leader. Joe Mecca serves in a role of corporate PR. Amy Johnson is a communications manager for a local nonprofit. Thank you, Amy, for that extra special tidbit. Robin is a marketing and PR pro in economic development. Molly is with the agency side of things in PR. Cindy Baldwin is working with the Parks and Recreation, Communications and Marketing in a government sector. So we've got a nice variety of pretty much all the cross sections I could probably think of.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. And again, my goal is to move through this fairly quickly. Make sure you jot down what resonates for you. You'll have the recording if you want to refer back to it. And then again, at the end, I'm going to give some tips of how to network today. So save your questions to the end, jot them to the side, and I really want to open up and make it really interactive here at the end so we can talk about real world scenarios that you guys might be facing right now. So again, my book is called You Don't Have to Shout to Stand Out, and it's all about connecting and converting. And these are the definition of networking that is my favorite definition. So it's the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions. And specifically, this is my favorite part, which is why it's bolded, the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. And the reason I like to start with this is that, people say, go networking. So their definition of networking is that you have to go somewhere into a big group of people possibly to network. And that's not it at all. You're cultivating productive relationships. And so if we can change that paradigm a little bit to realize it's not something you do in terms of go to, it's not a place you go, but it's a thing that you do. And so that's what I love to start with in terms of networking as a principle. Now, again, I mentioned today we're going to do a little bit of the inner work, talk a little bit about the outer work of networking. I put together my ideas for virtual networking in the era of COVID. And then I'm going to give you some networking resources at the end in case that resonates with you. So I'm going to start here with this picture. And when we talk about the inner work, what I mean is, who are you as a person? A lot of you have probably heard the term personal branding, though I don't love that phrase, but everyone knows, I think, what that means when they hear it. And I think what happens sometimes is when we enter school, we move into this mainstream process of testing and learning, and somehow we kind of lose our personal self in that cultured norm. So this happens to be a picture of me as a little girl. And when I bring this up, my invitation to you is go find a picture of you as a child that's a favorite picture of yours. And just take a look at it. Like, who were you then? And how might that have maybe transformed over the years as you've grown? Now here you'll see my affinity for red in the picture, and you see my red glasses. I have a red purse. So there's some things even as a child that I've carried with me as an adult. And when you look at the inner work too, we might say, gosh, what is my personality, my unique personality, and where might I be changing that just to fit in, or because I think we have to behave a certain way when networking? Another thing to ask yourself when you look at the inner work is, what belief systems, I call that the BS, what belief systems might I have developed about myself, about networking. And sometimes those belief systems are developed as a child, or sometimes even when there's a trauma. So traumas can be big or little. It may be somebody seemingly rejecting you at a networking event, maybe, that caused you to not really love doing those things. So really starting with that child inside of ourselves to reconnect with who we really are is one big first step. This little girl would never have known that she would become a speaker. If you had said that to me, even in my early entrepreneur days, I would have laughed you out of the room. This little girl had no idea that she'd be facing a genetic connective tissue disorder that would give her chronic illness throughout her whole life and make her really have to manage her energy really well. And this little girl would have never known she would have faced bankruptcy at no fault of her own at some point in her life either. So all of these things are what form us. And if we think about that in terms of how we want to position or present ourselves in networking, it's an important question to ask ourselves and really remember who we really are. Now, some of you may have heard or seen this image. This is a representation of what purpose, or if you follow Simon Sinek, which I'm sure many of you do, since he's a marketing kind of guru. And we talk about the big why, or your purpose. And this is part of your inner work as a person and how you might represent yourself in your company, with your family, as well as with networking, because purpose isn't about your work. It's about your being. And so when we can really come together and think about what we love, what the world needs, what you're good at, this can help us get even closer to our purpose. So if you haven't done that kind of exploration for yourself, I highly recommend that you do. Now, Simon does have a book called Find Your Why, so you could do something like that. But there are some other authors out there who also have workbooks that can guide you through discovering more about your purpose. And in my book, You Don't Have to Shout to Stand Out, there's actually a bonus worksheet that's a purpose worksheet that can help you as well. So if you buy the book, you get access to those free worksheets as well. Now, the other component is your ideal life design. Now, why would I be talking about this in terms of inner work? And the reason is that we're cultured to believe that our lives center around our work because that's how we earn money. But what I like to do is reel back this lens and be able to look at your holistic life so that you can choose how you want to show up in the world. You might be coming back to work after having a child and you want less hours, or you might be an empty nester and you want to add to your work life with some other, I don't know, volunteerism or board role. So to really take this time to decide what it is you want in your holistic life, this is going to help bring to you the things that you choose. Now, I love this image on the slide because I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but you can set plans and then the universe has some other plans for you. And one of the reasons I think that can be is that it's connected to our purpose. So we can put plans in place, but if we don't take into account the fact that our purpose is going to lead us to places that we may A, have never thought of, or B, were different than we thought of, then we can sometimes hiccup our ability to move through the world if we're really staying attached to this outcome that we thought should have happened. So part of what I encourage is to build agility skills, because with knowing your ideal life design and your purpose, and we're going to talk about values here in a second, it's going to better help you make those choices that are aligned with you. And if you're like me and you believe in the law of attraction, or like attracts like, or what you think about you bring about, or the power of positive thinking, all of these concepts are about kind of vibrating at a certain frequency so that you're bringing in things that are aligned with you. And when you broaden that scope to your holistic life and not just your work, you might find a connection when you're out in a social outing. even though it's not work related. So it opens up the opportunity for the universe to bring you something that's aligned, that may be outside of the workplace. All right, let's talk quickly about values. Now, we make decisions every day based on our value system, but we often don't sit and think about, what are my values? So that's another tool you might choose to adopt. What are your personal values? What are your core values? And this, if you're in job search, could help you choose a company that's aligned with you. If you look at their mission, vision, value statement before you interview and really get a sense of who they are. This also is going to play a part in what charities you might be donating to right now during this pandemic. It's all based on your values, but if you're operating unconsciously with that, then you can't use it even better consciously. So again, my invitation is make a list of your values, post them up on the wall somewhere, put them in your portfolio or make it your screensaver on a tablet, and really make sure you keep those top of mind, because it's going to help you with aligned decision making. And so all of these feed into that BS that I was telling you about, your belief systems. I love this image. As an introvert, my inner world is really active inside of my head. So we have belief systems that serve us, and we have belief systems that don't serve us. So for example, if you step into networking and you think you have to sell yourself and you don't feel comfortable with that, and that feels icky, then that's going to hinder your effectiveness when you're networking. If your belief system is instead that you're stepping into a room to find people to help, then that's going to be a different way to look at networking. And it's a way that isn't icky or salesy. It's a way of kind of looking karmically that if you help someone else, you know that the law of attraction is going to bring you something in alignment. So watch out for those belief systems, because they can hinder you as well as help you. Now, here's where some of the content you're probably familiar with. There's so many different resources that tell you what percentage of communication is words, tone of voice, or facial expression, or body language. But I thought this was important, especially today, to talk about so that we can really look at the breakdown, because we are dealing a lot more remotely, and that in-person body language isn't part of what we're dealing with today in business or networking. So words are 7% of what you intend, tone of voice is 23, and facial expression and body language are both 35. And you can see my source here. And what this really shows us is, think about the medium you're using for networking, communication, and conversation. Only 7% in text alone or words alone is being communicated. If you amp it up by using the telephone, now 30% of what you intend is coming across. So again, think about what's happening right now. Are you using more email and text, or are you picking up the phone more? And you really want to understand the medium that you're using in terms of the effectiveness of that medium. If we had video like today's call, you're now 65% effective. So it's better, but it's still not 100%. And obviously, when we add the in-person, we're now at 100% effective. So when I work with entrepreneurs, for example, and I find out they're sending out proposals by email, I screech that to a halt immediately. Why? Because if you're business developing and you just send a proposal across, you're going to get crickets chirping probably, and you don't have the ability to navigate that conversation when you are describing your proposal. So I tell them to 100% get at least on a video call and deliver the proposal, moving through the high points with the person so that you can have that sales conversation right there in the moment. Now, this applies, of course, to networking as well, especially in the age of COVID. So we're going to talk a little bit about ways to network at the end of the presentation today. So let's just keep moving along then. Now, some of you also may have heard the urban legend that a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds and a human has an attention span of 8 seconds. Now, I say this is an urban legend because no one has found the results of this survey or this research, but I know at minimum that when I'm talking, you actually have a bandwidth in your brain that's 3 to 4 times greater than what you're hearing coming out of my mouth right now. So some of you might be making your shopping list for Amazon right now. Some of you might be multitasking on the side. And this is because your brain has this huge capacity that's much faster than you listening to my voice speaking right now. So at minimum, again, understand the playing field that you're on when you're going networking. You have got to catch people's attention really quickly. So again, this presentation is about connecting and then converting. So in order to connect, you need to catch their attention really quickly. So how do you do that? Now, those of you who've seen Simon's TED Talk, what he says there is that Martin Luther King did not have a "I have a plan" speech. He had an "I have a dream" speech. And so what happened when people were listening to him is that they were connected to the passion of his message. And it's a global message. It wasn't what I call a micro message. So when we are out networking, it's really important for you to have what I call broadcast messages and also micro messages. And we're going to talk about both. So the broadcast message might be in networking when people ask you what you do, that you instead tell them what you believe or what your purpose is. So for example, when I'm networking, people say, "What do you do, Christine?" I say, I believe as great as technology is, it pushes us behind screens of all sizes, and it's causing people to converse less. And so I'm on a mission to bring people together to keep those conversation muscles active so we can keep human connection alive. Wow. Well, that doesn't say anything of what I do specifically, but if they believe what I believe, as Simon would say, they're listening. So that's one example of a position statement, or you could also speak your why. Those are 2 examples in the book of what I call a broadcast message. Now let's talk about micro messaging. And I love this slide. It's my favorite one, my Jello slide. Here's my example for micro messaging. So think in your mind's eye, what is Jello to moms? So Jello to moms might be a fast and easy dessert, okay? What is Jello to kids? Well, they might say it's fun, it's wiggly, it's colorful, I can squish it through my teeth, or whatever the case might be. And what is Jello to college kids? If you don't know the answer to that one, I would say Jello shots. So it is a conduit for alcohol for them. So the charge is on us to understand what we offer and how it's different for our different audiences. Now, again, you guys are communication experts and you know this, but it can feel differently when it's us personally networking. So remember in your arsenal to pull together some broadcast messages and then pull together some micro messages so that when you're speaking with somebody in a conversation, you can drop those little sound bites and they will be very interested because you've painted a really clear picture of what you're all about. Now, some of you who know Simon will know this comes from his golden circle, but just a reminder that people make decisions based on emotion, not logic. And so I think it was, I'm not sure, Zig Ziglar, I think, is the one who said that people are more swayed by your strength of conviction than they are by logic or reason. So when you have this assortment of sound bites and not just an elevator pitch, which I don't love in networking, then you're able to more quickly grab their emotion so that they can feel a connection with you. So remember that having that different library of sound bites can really be powerful within conversations. All right. Now let's talk about presence. This is actually when you're engaging with people, and I love this slide. Those of you who know Amy Cuddy may have read her book called Presence. But in it proposes that we can make our body inform our brain, not just the other way around. So with a body position like Wonder Woman, with your hands on your hips like that, for 2 minutes standing in this way, you're actually raising your testosterone and you're lowering your cortisol in your body. And so what I recommend to people is, let's say you're going somewhere for an interview, shut your car door, stand outside your car for maybe 2 minutes with this pose, and you're going to be able to get your body ready for that interview. It may be the same if you're going into a networking event. Now, in today's climate, with everything being remote, and you're on the other side of the phone, you could stand this way and talk on the phone, and people aren't going to know any different. If you're on a video call, you can do it before the meeting or before the interview. So understand the power that you have in your body to change the chemistry so that you can express yourself in a way that is stronger than without doing it. All right, now let's talk about looking at these conversations in possibly a different way. Now, what I find is that sometimes people are just uncertain about how a conversation is going to go. The other thing I find is that highly relational people let the other person talk more in the conversation than they talk. So they kind of defer to the other person and don't get kind of their piece of it to be able to make it an exchange. So if you go into it with the idea that you're going to host a mini meeting in this conversation, then this is how it would look. Remember that there's a beginning to the conversation, and as highly relational people, we're going to find out more about them. So that's the first step, is ask them about them, ask them what they're facing right now, ask them what resources they might need. But also know that there's a middle to this conversation, that you have a chance to kind of stake your claim to be able to make this networking conversation about you as well. Now, if you don't know what your intention is or your needs are, then you're going to skip this step. So again, that might be your homework. If you're going into networking opportunities without having thought through what your needs are, then you're not going to be able to articulate your needs. So make sure you think about what your needs are at that particular moment so that you can also tell them what you need. Now, you might say this feels a little uncomfortable. So what I like to turn on highly relational people is to think about when someone else has said what they needed to you and how good it felt for you to help them with that need. So if you're nodding your head yes that feels good for you, then know that when you're taking this middle step for you, that you're giving them that pleasure of helping you. So again, if you don't know what you want, you're not going to get what you want. And so I want you to think ahead of time so that you can articulate it and allow other people to help you. And again, then there's an end to the conversation. So, you know, there's a worksheet in the free bonuses of the book. If you buy, you don't have to shout to stand out. It's called a fruitful one-on-one worksheet. And so it helps you lay out ways to make it a fruitful one-on-one connection or conversation. Now, some of you may have heard of the DISC assessment, which is a behavioral or a communication style. So I like to use this puzzle piece because it shows you that people are different. They're motivated by different things. And if you can speckle your sound bites with a little bit of all of this, then you know that you're going to land on somebody's style. So the creative tends to be a little more high energy. It sees the big picture. The logical person really focuses on just the facts. And then you have people who are a little less high energy, and they're a little more practical and a little more relational. So if you can blend in your sound bites, some of these aspects, you're going to know that you're going to really pique the interest of the listener. And the content of the book, You Don't Have to Shout to Stand Out, teaches you how to deal with different styles differently. All right, now let's talk about going out into the wild and actually having these conversations. You'll learn about my ask conversation model in the book. In the book, I call it the 3-step conversation model. And so just like having a beginning, middle, and an end to the conversation itself, I want you within the conversation to learn the ask model. And here's what it is. The A stands for acknowledge, and all you're doing is acknowledging what you heard the person say. The second part of the conversation is that you want to state what your desire or your outcome is, or what you want. So again, you need to know what you want in order to ask for it. Then you end the 3 steps with a question, and you pause to give them a chance to answer it. Now, the reason that this sandwich works so well is that when you acknowledge people, they feel heard. Many of us are experts in our fields and we're consulting people, so we'll dive right into answering their question. But if you pause a moment to acknowledge, that gives them the space to go, oh, this person actually listened to what I said. Then you want to state that desired outcome. And then when you ask the question, you're inviting their participation in that part of the conversation. So what does that look like in practice? What I'm going to give here is a typical networking interaction. So if you've talked with somebody, you want to acknowledge them. And here's one example. You can say, I can tell you're passionate about your work. That's just acknowledging what you've heard. The second step is to state your desired outcome. And in this example, I'd like to speak further with you next week. So you're telling them what they want, what you want, right inside this conversation. And then the question could be, do mornings or afternoons work better? And when we do this, where we're narrowing it down to mornings or afternoons, it's an easy way for them to say, you know, mornings are quieter or afternoons are quieter. And then as you decide when you're going to reconnect with the person, you're much clearer on where that's going. So that's just one of a bazillion ways that you can use the ask model, but it's a typical way that you would use it in that networking context. So again, it doesn't feel as unwieldy when we know the structure of it, and it gives us a little bit more strong of a platform to stand on, because we aren't uncomfortable and we aren't feeling like we're selling the person. We're just simply taking them to the very next step. And that's, I think, what's important to remember about networking is that you're not going to propose on a first date. So be ready to stage your interactions into different steps so that you can move through in a very purposeful way. So what I want you to do is really harness your true nature when you're out networking. I know when I first started networking, it felt really awkward because I was doing and modeling what other people were doing. And then over time, I developed this more highly relational approach so that not only did I feel better about it, but the chances of attracting similar people, you know, like attracts like, was greater. All right, so I want to come back to this definition of networking before we move into some of these ideas I wanted to give you about networking in the age of COVID. So remember that networking isn't a place you go, because obviously you guys are probably networking now, even when we're sheltered at home. But remember that we're cultivating productive relationships. And so in order to do that, remember, you've got to think about what it is you want so that when you enter these conversations, you can not only help them by asking what their needs are, but you can be ready to ask for what your needs are. All right, so I'm going to move on to this detail of what I wanted to present for virtual networking. Now, this is more of that outer work, but I wanted to invite you to consider different ways to network now that we are sheltered at home and most often using the telephone, social media, and probably we're probably all zoomed out at this point, but still that's the mediums we have to work with right now. So the number one thing that I recommend to people with networking is to individually message people that you know. Now, I phrase it this way specifically because I happen to feel like broadcast messaging right now is really raising the din of white noise. Everything's gone on Zoom. As an introvert, my social life has never been busier because I can connect with people on Zoom. But when we only broadcast message and don't bring the message down to an interactive with one other person, then you're missing opportunities to connect with people. If you send a broad email to several people, you're much less likely to get a response than if you sent an individual message. Now, the content of the message is up to you. You might just want to check on them and see how they're doing. Now, I say that, but I also want to caution you. I think empathy is being overused at this point in our shelter at home. So be real sincere, whatever your message is, and just be aware to not overuse empathy. Certainly do a personal check-in, but make sure that it is personalized and that it's authentic. Now, you can also use the ask model in email. And when you end an email with that question, you'll be surprised at how quickly you'll get a response compared to not ending the email in that question. So the ask model works for that too. Now, you might want to feature people in your network on LinkedIn. So with one of my clients, this is a strategy that we took and her first post got over 1,200 eyeballs, and she was posting about somebody that she wanted others to meet in her network. So this is one way to virtually network, is to start featuring people and give them exposure. So again, you're feeling like you're helping them, which is awesome. And it feels good. And then people see you as a resource instead of only, calling them when you need something, let's say. Now, you could also post a specific connection need on LinkedIn yourself. So once you thought about what your needs are and remember how good it feels to help other people, don't be shy to post something and say, hey, I'm looking for a connection to somebody in the C-suite at this particular company. Who do you know? How can you connect me? And people will be falling over themselves to help. The other thing you might do is to post a shout out on social media. So you might just be really loving a particular company and what they're doing at this time. So you might just shout out on them, whether it be Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever your media is, but just shout out. Just start looking at people that you want to highlight or things that they're doing and say, hey, I just want to acknowledge this person for what they're doing. Now, more traditional ways to virtually network, to hold one-on-one virtual coffee meetings. I'm sure that's probably happening, but when I talk with people, I'm seeing that it's not happening as much as I thought it would. And this comes down to the first point, that sometimes when you individually connect with people and have those virtual one-on-ones, you have a greater and a deeper exchange. And that just feeds the soul of people who are highly relational like us. Now, the other thing you can do virtually is host introduction video meetings. So think about people in your network that you think should know each other and for what reason. And then you might reach out to both of them and say, hey guys, I think you should meet each other. Let's hop on a video chat with the three of us so I can introduce you, and then send them on their way, in terms of that connection. But what that really shows is that you've intentionally thought about people and how they might benefit from connecting with each other. So I think you can see here the theme is about how you can be a resource to others. And that usually puts us out of the salesy or icky place when networking and puts us in a place of saying, wow, this feels really good because I'm helping other people, but I'm also knowing what my needs are, and I'm weaving that through these activities as well so that I can network for myself also. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the who's for virtual networking. And then I'm going to give you some of those networking resources in a minute as well. So again, look at companies you admire, things they might be doing in the age of COVID, or just in general, companies that you might have been wanting to connect to. And if you reach out to a key contact, let's say on LinkedIn, and say, hey, I see what you're doing with the food banks in your area, and I just want to tell you that it's rocking, and I love seeing what you're doing, like keep up your good work. When you come at it from that sincere place, they're going to hear that in the message. So many of us get pitched so often on LinkedIn that this type of sincere outreach really stands out. So don't hesitate to really think about who you've been wanting to meet and connect with at certain companies, and look at what they're doing and do a sincere outreach to those key contacts. And that's another way of continuing the conversation that would lead to what you need as well, or what you're looking for from them. Sometimes we overlook the opportunity to go back through our college. So for example, I graduated with my MBA at Centenary University in New Jersey, and they're on my list to reach out to see if I can give their graduates a free seminar on something, because I want to give back. And when there's an affinity group that are out there, like people who share graduating the same college, they're going to give you more credence and credibility when you reach out to them, because you have that commonality. So that's one way. You could reach out to former colleagues or former bosses. And again, looking at that prior slide about the how, you can pull them into either connections or one-on-ones just to catch up with them and see how you might be able to support them. Don't overlook your volunteer organizations as well. One of the things I tell my job search clients is that if you're going to have a gap in your resume, then you may as well volunteer right now. So reach out to organizations who might need envelopes stuffed or phone calls made, so that you can not only feel like you're giving, but you're also continuing that experience on your resume. And you're also connecting to people that you may not have ever connected to before, and you can let them know you're in job search. So again, just another example. Now, this last one, I like to say, when Meetup was born, I used to say that if you want to meet other people who fly purple kites, you can go to Meetup and find other people who fly purple kites. Now, hobbies are also an affinity connection. So maybe you're a sewer who is sewing masks to donate right now, or a crochet person who's making those extensions for the mask so they don't hurt the healthcare workers' ears. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe you're a dancer. Maybe you collect, I don't know, baseball cards. So don't overlook networking, even with your fellow hobbyists. Chances are there are going to be people in those groups who are looking for connections themselves, and you can connect in that authentic way over your hobby, and then take that conversation deeper to see how you can help them and to tell them how you might be able to help you. Okay? All right, so we're in the home stretch here. So I want to recap the book bonus worksheet. So I would love, love, love if you would purchase this book on Amazon. It's $5. I've made the Kindle version really cheap so that you can get these juicy free resources. So you get access to a purpose discovery worksheet. You can learn how to create your position statements, which is one of those broadcast messages that I told you about. You can get a wise worksheet. And what that means is that it's a practice to figure out what style people are, so that you can connect more strongly with people based on their style. And then lastly, I mentioned the fruitful one-on-one worksheet, which basically takes you through a process and a practice of actually holding the one-on-one so that it's fruitful for both people. Now, I also am going to ask your help. I love doing these free talks, and I also believe in that like attracts like energy exchange. So I just published my third book, which is Get Ready, Get Set, Flow. And it has been a #1 new release on Amazon for 11 days. Today's the 12th day. So if you wanted to get excited with me and keep that run for me going, go ahead and go to Amazon and grab that book. Again, $5 for the Kindle. But what this one does, it takes you more into that inner work and the practices that I mentioned earlier about how to set your ideal life design, your values, your purpose. And it also teaches you mindfulness practices to really integrate work and life so that it's not a burden. And instead, it's a part of who you are, no matter where you show up in the world. All right, so as I wrap up here, all of these things can be found on my website, which is christineclifton.com, easy to remember. And we're getting ready to open up for Q&A, so get your questions ready. You can get a free training at my website called Ignite Your Inner Leader. You could book a complimentary discovery call with me if you're in job search, or you're looking to strengthen your messaging, or if you're looking to improve your networking skills. We can talk about that on the discovery call. If you know an organization that's looking for speakers right now, I would love to know those organizations, and I really welcome those connections from you. So as you might be able to see, guys, I'm kind of incorporating my networking technique here, where I'm asking for what my needs are too. And you can buy my books or book, and I'm going to give you a digital version of my guidebook, Your Spirit at Work, for free. So if you go to Amazon and buy either of those books, then send me the receipt to hello@christineclifton.com, and I will send you the free digital guidebook as my thank you for helping my books stay alive at this time on Amazon. All right. I'm going to come out of this presentation. Now, you guys have been blind to me this whole time, so I'm just going to stop the share and let's open it up for Q&A. Now, if you don't have a question, you might want to share a takeaway, or maybe a little facet of something that you didn't know before, or that you're going to focus on more for yourself. All right, so let's get ready for those questions. How's it going over there, Lisa?
It's great. Also, virtual round of applause. Thank you, Christine.
You're welcome. And I have to say, it's really odd to present blind like that. So
you don't get that gratifying feedback when you tell a joke and everybody laughs, or when they share a round of applause with you.
Yeah.
So from the chat, a couple of things I don't know if you got to see, but I said, spoiler alert, I think we might have to purchase a few copies of your book to do as a member giveaway next month. So maybe we'll purchase all of the books and help you keep trending at that bestseller accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Kat shared that she loved your suggestion, and she made a mood board collage in January and keeps it by her bed. Keeps her focused, and it's pretty.
I love that.
I am going to be doing the Wonder Woman pose when I get out of my car and go anywhere moving forward.
Perfect.
Kat also suggests that Twitter is a great place to network. I would chime in too that I'm finding unique value in LinkedIn, because I think it's one of those places that people have long thought of it as people are only using it if they're job hunting. And so I think it kind of gets a bad rap. And then also, there's more opportunity to be successful there because you're not competing with as many voices, that white noise that you referenced.
Yeah, good point.
Gang, for anyone attending, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, or if you want to chat them, feel free. I would also like to say thank you, Christine, for that awesome sales and business development tip about doing your presentation of a proposal in person, or at least via video, because you get the body language, you get the tone, you get all the things that you miss via email. That was really eye-opening for me. Being an agency leader, I'm charged with our sales tactics, and I think I'm as guilty as everyone, as I have the first meeting in person or by phone, and then I typically follow up via email. But I think I might shift my strategy, thanks to your pro tip.
Oh, good. And if I could just speak briefly on that, what I find makes things less icky or salesy to me is when I know what my process is, and then I can articulate that in the moment with the human being. So if someone's interested in my services, I'll say, okay, this is how I'd like to work. I'm going to do a needs assessment so that I can create the proposal, and then we'll meet again so I can review the proposal with you. How does that sound? And then I'm using that 3-step conversation model just to articulate my process up front so they know what to expect down the road. And usually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and book the proposal meeting right then, because I know how long it's going to take me to do a proposal and get it to them. So I'll say, okay, let's book it for next week and get it on the calendars right then, as opposed to trying to track the person down, that type of thing. So again, I'm an efficiency expert. I want to get the most out of any interaction that I have. And also that means by serving the other person. So when you know your process ahead of time, you can let people know what it is, they know what to expect, and they're waiting for your follow-up or for that next meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine.
Cool.
Gang, if you don't want to ask any questions publicly, feel free to email me at lisa@rollywoodmedia.com after this presentation. I'm happy to connect you with Christine for one-on-ones. Kelly, it looks like you chimed in. Let me give the floor to you, my friend.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Christine. This was awesome. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So I think, one thing that is always, everybody always has the best intention to network well and like follow up with people and check in with people, and then life gets so busy. Do you have, I love like even just having that bulleted list of like your, who's in the types of people in your network that you could think of and kind of keep top of mind, and almost like revisiting that to run through it in your mind. But is there anything, any tools that you use or that you really, use, like whether it's on your mobile phone or to keep you organized around who you want to personally keep in touch with, and maybe who professionally you want to keep in touch with? What methods do you do to remind yourself of that?
I love that question. Thank you so much. And I use a couple different methods. My favorite method is my intuition, believe it or not. And so what I find is if I'm really clear on my values, my ideal life design, my purpose, and what my goals are for my business or my work, then I've already let the universe know what it is I need. So I really need to attune to my intuition as to what actions I should take. So for example, I have one client right now who is a architect and designer, and her business obviously has gone out the window right now. And so what I'm working on with her is to not just do action for action's sake, just to have something to do, but instead to really keep in mind her life vision, her work vision, and use that intuition to choose who and how to reach out to. And so it's hard when you're feeling kind of constricted, especially money-wise, but the more that we can open up that connection, the better off we are. Now, I will also tell you as an entrepreneur, I have tried every CRM known to man, right? And I always ended up feeling like I was killing a fly with a cannon with a CRM. Like I didn't need all those bells and whistles as a solopreneur. And so now what I do is two things. One is I have some processes in place that help me ping my intuition and decide what to do. So every Monday morning, I have time on my calendar where I go in my follow-up folder in my Gmail account. So anytime I send something out and I tell people I'm going to follow up with them, I drop it in a folder called follow-up. And then I go and look at that folder and I use my intuition to say, who do I want to follow up with now? So that's one way. The other way is, and if you don't feel you need a CRM either, is to just at the moment that you hang up the phone with somebody, go ahead and put it on your calendar as a task. So make it, don't block out your calendar, make it, free time, but just a little prompt to call Susie this week about XYZ. And so if you do it right as you hang up and you make that your practice or a habit, then you won't lose track of those connections either. Now, I'm not dissing CRMs. It totally makes sense for some people. And there's some easy ones and some complex ones. So don't get me wrong, they can be helpful, but really ask yourself the degree of the need you have right now. So if I have that folder that I visit, then I can let my intuition also tell me what feels right for me to do in any particular week. The reason I'm on the call today is that somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn. We had a one-on-one, and he introduced me to Lisa because I told him I wanted to speak. So, again, know who you want to connect with, know what your needs are, and don't be shy to ask for what you need, and make sure that it rolls into the next thing. So if you want to follow up with somebody and you just had a one-on-one with no action items, then what I would tell them is, you know what I like to do? I like to stay in touch with people like every month or so. So would it be okay with you if I emailed you in 6 or 8 weeks just to check in and see how you're doing? Most people are not going to say no to that. And so again, it lets them expect that you're going to call, and then it gives you that flexibility to really decide when it feels right for you to call and follow up. Does that help?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I love the analogy of trying to switch a fly with a cannon. I might have to use that because we've definitely, we've tried the bells and whistles, with some of the larger CRMs and that integrate email and blogs and, all of that. But as a smaller, boutique agency, it was too much. So we went into, we're using a different product, actually locally made, locally founded, Levitate, which is it's a really nice tool for kind of teams that want to share connections with each other and kind of see who's reached out to whom. But yeah, definitely, I love that analogy, and also love the personal folder, the follow-up folder. I think that's a great way to. I love the intuition as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And let me tell you, if I were to add up the money that I've spent on CRMs, all of those automated things, it's really sad how much money I spent on it. But in other ways, I think it's good to try it and see if it works for you. Like at one point I was using Salesforce as a solopreneur, and how crazy is that? But it's the only one I knew about at the time I started, and so I tried it. But now the more soft approach works for me, and so I think it has to match who you are as a person as well, whatever process you choose. So to think ahead, A, of your process and know how you're going to take people through, and then B, make sure you've got the sound bites that bridge everybody to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, because then they know to expect it. And it doesn't feel as icky when it's, 6 weeks later and you go to reach out to them. You have already asked that permission on that prior call.
Right.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you.
Have fun with that. Anyone else? Questions or takeaways?
Awesome. Well, Christine, thank you again. I think at this point, I'm going to end the recording, and we will get this up on the RPRS website for members to tune in the future. I was taking copious notes over here of your great slides, but this is also a great way for anyone who wants to go back and take a deeper dive into Christine's topics. You'll have that available to you. We will email this out, a link for everyone to check out. There's lots of thanks coming in on the chat. So thanks everyone for participating. And Christine, congrats again on the book sales success. And we all look forward to championing your efforts moving forward.
Oh, thank you so much. That would make me so happy.
And thanks to everyone who joined in as our first guinea pigs for tonight or today's virtual event. We look forward to doing more with y'all in the future. Thanks everyone for being a part. Have a great day.
Bye, Lisa. Thanks, everyone.